Hello everyone, what's up? Prince15 here with another episode review of The Acolyte. Today we are taking a look at the third episode, which is entirely a flashback, which I find interesting because a lot of times flashbacks in TV shows aren't uncommon or even movies. I mean it's a well-known, well-worn framing device for how to tell your story at this point. Everyone knows what a flashback is. I do find it interesting that this was an entire flashback episode that had no connective tissue to our present day timeline where the other two episodes were. So the last we've left our characters really is May escaping from the village after killing Floaty McFloaterface and then Soul, who I know his name now, Master Soul, and then Master Soul confronting Osha. So that's where we're going to continue to leave them for another little while because this entire episode was a flashback, which I thought was an interesting place to put a flashback. Now moving forward, it may be. It makes sense why they put the flashback there. But as where we are in the story right now, it is I would not have put a flashback right here. But you know what? Regardless, I think it's. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that the flashback provides us in terms of seeing where Osha and May come from, their little colony of witches. Very, very cool inclusion, I think, to include witches. Now, I do find it funny that some people online are freaking out over the fact that you have Force witches, and people going, this isn't a thing that's ever been in Star Wars before, and I'm just like, way to out yourself that you know absolutely nothing about Star Wars outside of like the main movies and stuff, because you've clearly never seen Clone Wars, you've never read anything about the expanded universe, because the Night Sisters date back to a novel from like 1993 or something like that. I've read it. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I remember reading that novel that the Night Sisters originally appear in. We had it in our high school library, if you can believe that. I read that back in high school. So the Night Sisters have been around for a while, but these aren't Night Sisters. This is like a different coven of some sort of different sect of Force users. And I saw some people like freaking out about this. And I'm like, I don't get what's to freak out about. Because there's a couple things here that people are freaking out about that I'm like, okay, well, let's hold our horses here. We don't know the full story yet. So some of your complaints may be addressed by the story. And then others, it's like, well, this is the way Star Wars has been for a while. Get used to it. Case in point being, it's like, there's no witches in Star Wars. Yeah, there are. There have been for a while. Anyway, moving on. I did actually like the inclusion of this different sect of Force witches and stuff, because it's something that just doesn't really get brought up a whole lot in Star Wars, because our main focus is on the battle between the Jedi and the Sith, the light and the dark. And you occasionally get some sprinklings of other forces in there, like the Night Sisters, but they're pretty usually quickly taken off the board. And I think the same, it's the same here. The same can be said here, where they're all dead, so much for them. But I think it makes sense to include other factions, other Force users, in Star Wars besides just Jedi and just Sith. It's like those cannot be the two main religions of the Force. And Rebels and other material have kind of dived into this a little bit, where the Lasat have their own concept of the Force. They call it the Ashla. Bendu quotes, and he says the light side is known as the Ashla, the dark side as the Bogon. So there is this deeper mythos of the Force and how it's been carried through different civilizations throughout the thousands of years that this galaxy has existed. And I mean, if this is a thing that, binds and penetrates the entire universe together, it makes sense that there would be these other peoples that would interpret and pick up and use the Force in different ways than just the Jedi. or just the Sith. So I really like this inclusion here because it is opening up Star Wars and making it it's continuing to show that the storytelling possibilities in this universe are kind of endless, because you have your spaghetti western Mandalorian type of story. You have your political dramas with a lot of stuff going on in the prequel stuff. You have your classic adventure story with the original trilogy. And now we're kind of having what potentially, I wonder if this is where the Acolyte is going. If this is almost opening up a more philosophical or religious debate aspect, which could be really cool. Because the Jedi Order is kind of the recognized Force religion of the Republic. So the Jedi showing up on this planet and going, it's like, it's Republic law that we have a right to test children to see if they can be Jedi. And then the head witch says back that this planet is not part of the Republic, so you don't really have any jurisdiction here. So yeah, lots of different interpretations of the Force being shown off here in this one scene. I like how they kind of point at the idea that they've been persecuted, and driven from their homes, because it's clearly former Jedi from some other planet did this to them, interpreting these witches as straight up darksiders, like what they're doing is evil. And I can understand that, because when the head witch takes control of Floaty McFloaterson, but before he's Floaty McFloaterson, and it's just a Padawan at that point. I promise I'll get some of these names down. Takes control of him using the Force, and like his eyes black out, and he's just kind of like standing there frozen. I mean, that's freaky. Yeah, that's freaky. That's probably not typically what would be considered a good guy power. So, I mean, I kind of understand. But at the same time, she kind of does that as like a last resort, just kind of like, hey, please leave us alone. We don't want to have to do this. She because they could have started fighting with the Jedi immediately, but instead it was a put down your weapons, we're just going to speak thing. So yeah, I think there's lots of juicy stuff in this flashback, to chew on and see how this is going to affect the story going forward. The fact that Osha seems to have wanted to be a Jedi from the start. It's like, I find that interesting that it seems like they're in this insular little community, and this insular little community that seems to have demonized the Jedi, and yet she's like, oh no, the Jedi are good. I want to be a Jedi. And then May, as like a 8-year-old or however old she is here, so automatically is like, well, if you won't stay here and be my sister, then I'll just kill you. That does seem very ham-fisted and forced, pardon the pun. And so I'm wondering if this is going to be a thing where we are going to revisit this later and show that that's not exactly what happened. That there are going to be different perspectives here. And maybe Osha, and these are from Osha's memories, and she's not 100% remembering exactly what happened. Which is a reason why, and if that's the case, then that's another reason why I think it's odd to have packed all of this flashback into one episode and not drawn it out and fit it in over the course of several different episodes. Because I saw some complaints here about how some storytelling in this episode is ham-fisted and kind of amateurish, and seeing the little girl just saying, "Well, I'm just gonna kill you." It's like, okay, yeah, I can kind of agree with that. But that's one of these reasons where I'm like, well, let's wait and see where this goes. Because if this is one of these things where this is just a perspective of Osha's memories that aren't 100% factual, kind of like a la The Last Jedi, then I'm gonna hand wave it and go, oh yeah, that's acceptable because that was the point. But then I'd go, but then why did you put that all on one episode and not better lay that out and have little segments in other episodes? I don't know. I don't know. Again, this is only the third episode. We don't know how the remaining five, six, seven, eight. Yeah, we don't know how the remaining five are going to turn out. So, we don't know how the pacing is going to be. So that's just going to be a thing of wait and see, like most things. But yeah, so no, I did kind of scratch my head a little bit at that, going, yeah, that wasn't the most natural way of doing things. And there was a little bit of that in this episode, actually. I saw some people complaining about that in the first two episodes, and I didn't necessarily agree that it's like, oh, the dialogue is so forced, and it's like no one would actually speak this way. And I'm like, I don't know, it seemed fine to me. This episode I was a little bit more, yeah, okay. No, I'm seeing a little bit more in this episode. But again, that may be the point in this episode, because it's all, frayed, altered memories in Osha's mind. Also, Osha is a nickname, like her full name is Neosha or something like that. It was said during the ceremony. And I was like, oh, okay, so her full name is actually something else, and Osha is just a nickname. At least I think that's what I heard. So I thought that was an interesting little tidbit. It's like, it's ultimately not important. I think the only people that are going to care about that are the admins on Wikipedia going, yeah, we got to change your name. It's full name. We got a full name. But it's just a little more character detail there. So, see here, what else? Oh yes. People are freaking out about the fact that they seem to be alluding to the fact that the twins were created using the Force, and thinking this is breaking Star Wars canon. I mean, is it? Is it really? Because the thing everyone points to is Anakin's like, oh, well, Palpatine and Plagueis created Anakin. It's like, did they though? That's not a confirmed thing. That's like a fan theory. And yeah, it kind of gets alluded to a little bit in Revenge of the Sith when Palpatine's like, Darth Plagueis the Wise was so powerful he could even manipulate the midichlorians to create life. And it seems to be, that's what Palpatine's alluding to. But I mean, it's Palpatine. How it's like you're gonna trust everything that guy says. So that's one of the whole Plagueis and Palpatine ended up manipulating the Force to create Anakin, and Palpatine is somehow Anakin's father. That's been more of a fan theory. I think Lucas said that was maybe something he was toying around with at one point, and then he ended up dropping it, which then makes that not canon. So I mean, that's been one of those things that's always been kind of left up to interpretation and slash fan theories. So it's like I think what the movies more or less, looking at the overall saga, what the movies are more or less kind of saying is that there was an imbalance in the Force, so the Force created the chosen one, Anakin, to then right that wrong, correct that balance, and it wasn't anything that Palpatine or Plagueis did. So that being the case, this episode of the Acolyte, either way you spin it, I don't think this episode of the Acolyte changes anything about previously established Star Wars canon. I think some people are just freaking out because they want to freak out about things. And we don't know that that's exactly what the episode was alluding to. We can assume that given the fact that this is some sort of Force cult, Force religion, and it would make sense, but they could have also been like some sort of illegal genetic experiment. It's Star Wars. We have clones, so I mean, I think that would be on the cards as well. And that could be just one of those things that just never gets brought up, and it's again going to be one of those left to interpretation things. So who knows? But yeah, I feel like this episode really raised more questions than it really than providing answers, because just the way the events, because we got to see, we think, how everything went down that night to where Osha became Soul's Padawan. But there's still some gaps, because like Master Andara and and Klanaka, and it's like, what exactly went so horribly wrong that really sent Klanaka into hiding and Floating McFloaterface to get that big scar on his face. And so it's like, what are some of these other what there's clearly other things that happen after that either we have not seen about that incident or things that happen afterward because of that incident. So I think there's still answers, there's still questions to be answered. And until then, I don't. It's like until then, I don't really know how to speak on this episode in terms of review, other than just to like speculate about the plot and speak more on the production. Because it's like, well, it's like the this story's clearly not finished. We're probably going to be revisiting these events, so it's like, yeah, here's what happened. I think in terms, speaking of production, in terms of the production, there was one or two small moments that I think were odd editing wise. One of which being when the twins were speaking on the way to the Jedi camp that was set up on the outskirts of town. And it was a shot reverse shot. And it was May telling Osha to promise to lie so they could stay together. And it's like the way it looked like a jump cut. It looked like a jump cut because of the way that shot was edited, because we're facing May as she asked the question. Then the shot changes to be facing Osha as she mulls it over and then finally answers. But the background didn't change well enough, so it seemed like the twins teleported positions. And it looked a little weird. So I was like, oh, that's an odd oversight that usually a production of this caliber wouldn't have. But I don't know, maybe I blinked and I missed a transition, a brief second transition shot that was a close up or something. I don't think I did, because it's like that would be a really quick shot to have in there. But so yeah, that I thought was a little weird. But overall, I think that was really the only notes I had on the overall production of the episode. Okay. I will say once again, I'm seeing them getting the bang, getting their money's worth, the bang for their buck and their money's worth. If I can say that all properly, they're getting their money's worth out of the sets, because they reused that common room a lot. They reused that. They reused the outside courtyard a lot, because I think it's the same one that they used for the ceremony later. They reused the twins' bedroom. So it's like, all right, we've got our 3 locations here for this episode. And then the interior of the Jedi ship, despite being a different ship, I'm pretty sure is the exact same interior that we saw of the Jedi ship in an episode at the end of episode 1 and in 2. So yeah, it's definitely more of a TV sized production. They're not, it's like, you go to one location per episode and you get your couple medium sized sets, and that's what you get. But yeah, no, I'm enjoying it so far. Nothing has jumped out at me as being outright terrible so far, like so many people on the internet seem to like to say. But I'm not over the moon with it either. It's like, yeah, this is fine. I'm perfectly fine with this. I think it's gonna be how it sticks the landing. Does it stick the landing? Who is the Acolyte? Is it May? Is it is it Toothface, the Sith Lord? How's that all gonna? How's all that gonna go down? How are the eventual lightsaber fights gonna be? What is the identity of the person in the tooth mask? My money would definitely be on it being very possible that it is the apothecary guy from episode 2, and he's tricking May into thinking that he and the red blade wielder are two separate people, and this is him kind of keeping an eye on her. And then meanwhile, he is apprenticed to an actual Sith Lord, and so this is him trying to get a jump start on getting his own apprentice early and stuff, and bypassing the rule of two. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of sitting right now. Next episode, those thoughts may change, but that's where I'm kind of sitting right now on that. But I'm still engaged. I'm curious where this is all going, and I'm been enjoying it so far. It's like certainly not my favorite Star Wars thing ever thus far, but it's still got a long way to go. We'll see if that changes. So yeah, I think that's going to be pretty much it for this review. So thank you for watching. Remember to comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.